But yeah, there's a lot of, and I'm also going to use Twitter to, I've got a book, a memoir coming out in April, so that will help facilitate that. And also, I'm climbing Kilimanjaro in January with Dave Raccanello and Kevin Slowey from the Minnesota Twins, and we'll be kind of tweeting from, I've got a satellite that allows me to be able to tweet from the actual mountain.
Wow.
Nice. So I'll be able to, send pictures to the followers and whatnot from, 18,000 feet up, which will be pretty neat.
Are you planning on going back down to Cuba this year?
I want to go back down to Cuba. I'm going to see, from a time standpoint, I've also got 4 kids, so...
Congratulations on you.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. And so we'll see what I have time for, but that will definitely be my priority in the off-season, my family. So if Kilimanjaro is the only trip I feel like, in fairness to them, is the one I take, and that'll be the one I take this year, and we'll go back to Cuba the next year. But the organization that I'm a part of goes in 3 or 4 times in the off-season, so I'll have an opportunity if I can do it.
How do you train for something like that?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think just being in, it's great for me because being in good shape for the start of spring training is really what you can do at sea level, unless you can get to like Colorado Springs or Colorado or high altitude training. DJ Carrasco has a mask that I'm going to use that he's going to let me have to go on some runs with that will simulate being at 7,000 feet, 8,000 feet, 9,000 feet. It's got some settings on it and whatnot that kind of inhibit your oxygen intake, which will emulate what it'll be like on the mountain. So I'll be able to do some of that. But for the most part, I chose the route that was going to give us the best chance to summit Uhuru Peak, which is about 19,000 feet, a little under. And that'll be about an 8-day route. People get in trouble when they try to ascend too fast. So we're taking a few extra days just to kind of assure that we'll be able to do it.
It's amazing how just 18 months ago, how much has changed in your career between Kilimanjaro, Twitter, interacting with Met fans. You're riding a bike to spring training and trying to make the team, and now you're a mainstay and kind of a little bit of a cult figure in the Met community.
Well, it is. It goes to show you that there's the human narrative is just a neat thing. A lot of that's outside of my control, but the stuff that I felt like I could control, I really tried to throw myself into it, and I'm able to see some fruit of a lot of hard work and people who have poured into me, and so it's been nice.
Well, you have preconceived notions about New York and New York City, and how have those changed coming to the Mets, being in New York City, becoming part of New Yorker?
Yeah, I did have some preconceived generalizations, which I will admit, is really a lack of imagination on my part. I feel like any gross generalization is, a testament to lack of imagination. But when I came earlier with the American League team, I was with the Minnesota Twins and also with the Texas Rangers. I would only have little sample sizes of the city, and for the most part, it seemed, I never got outside the city. And I didn't get to experience the culture that New York has to offer very much. It was just train rides to the park and coming home. So I was exposed to the fan base as the enemy, and that was it. And so, when I signed here, I was a little bit apprehensive because I didn't know how I would fit in. But I've come to find, that it's a fantastic place, and I'm really glad to be a part of it.
So when you were in Texas and Minnesota, were you embraced by the fans as much as you have been here?
It's funny. This is a big market team, so to speak. We're dealing with a lot of people who come in and out of this place, and so, the other places didn't have the fan base, I would say, at least exposure-wise, that this place does. So, I would get, some small pockets of people who were interested in my story. But this just offers a stage that is unparalleled in the universe, I would say.
The book that's coming out, is it coming out in April? Is it complete now?
Yeah, the manuscript is due in December.
Oh, so you're still writing?
Yeah, so,
okay.
Presently I'm still writing it, and I have, I'm writing most of the book, but, I have an editor and a guy who helps me named Wayne Coffey, who also writes for the Daily News, and is a good friend of mine. He's helping me with some story arc issues and some things like that, but for the most part, it's just me writing. I've been working on it for about 5 years.
What's the difference this season in the clubhouse from the last season? You know, the second half of last season did not go well. It seems, even though the team had a touch in the second half, there seems to be a whole different spirit of this club, and more cohesive unit. Kind of probably because Terry is the guy that's holding everything together. You know, how it's got to be tough, you know, to keep up, keep your chin up, and you know, fight ahead and try to, you know, stay above 40.
Well, just to answer your first question, I think that the difference that you're seeing is strictly one that's due to some good leadership. Not that last year we didn't have good leadership. It's just this year it's much more stable. We know the manager is a good manager and is going to be back next year. We know the GM is going to be back next year. I mean, there's some pieces of the puzzle that are there that offer some real stability. That helps right off the get-go. So that kind of permeates down to the clubhouse, and everybody knows who they can lean on and what the vision for the club is. You know, there's some guys fighting for jobs in there, and they know that. That's, you know, there's a real kind of pulse of honesty that beats through our clubhouse, which is real refreshing. I think that's different. Guys aren't shy about telling the truth and telling you where you stand. That helps. So we got a lot of things that are really going well. You know, the communication this year has been much better between players, front office players, manager, and that's also helpful. So you've seen a lot of, you know, changes in culture, you know, as far as the way that the clubhouse is run and the people that are in it. And of course, every year there's a different dynamic simply because you're introducing new personalities.
So you've been around. With all the changes, with the guys going down, guys coming up, what's impressed you most about the young guys and how they've responded and stepped up in the absence of David Wright or Mike Davis?
I think the thing that's impressed me the most, let's take a couple of guys for example. Let's take Turner for example. You know, it's just been the consistency. You know, I think guys that are here obviously have the ability to be here. Right. You know, and can show you flashes of being really good because that's why they got drafted and that's why they've been able to play for the most part. But you know, there's been some guys here that have really shown a real consistent level of that kind of play. That's the thing that's kind of stuck out to me. Lucas Duda is one. You know, Turner, we mentioned, is another. Even Ruben Tejada's defense has just been spectacular for the most part. And you know that's what you're getting every time out with him. So it's, and Murphy. I mean, Murphy, you know, I never knew what Murphy could do because he was injured when I was here last year. But golly, man, that guy, he can really hit. He's a great guy to have in the clubhouse. So, you know, it's been a good mix this year. But the young guys in particular, I think that's what most impresses me is the consistency of play.
Is it easier for them coming without a whole lot of expectations because they weren't necessarily even expected to be on the team at that point, so they can kind of just let loose?
Yeah, well, let me be perfectly frank. You know, anytime that you have an opportunity to play, there's a level of expectation. You know, and so nobody goes out there with no expectations on them, or even a little bit of expectation. I mean, when you're out there because people are expecting you to do well, and that's you know, that's the umbrella that we play under, and that's okay. That's what makes this game great. You know, some guys can handle it, some guys can't, but make no mistake about it, every time you go out there, there's an expectation associated with it, and so from those guys being able to handle that expectation, I think is a real sign of maturity. You know, if you're able to kind of hold both, you know, that you're young and you're going to be allowed the latitude to make some mistakes, at the same time there's some pressure there because you've got to perform, being able to hold that together, a real sign of maturity, and they've done a good job of that.
Do you find that a lot of the younger pitchers have been coming to you for mentoring?
You know, I don't know about a lot. There's been a few that have leaned on me for some questions, and I've volunteered some questions, Dylan G in particular, and you know, John Neese and I locker beside each other, and I'd like to think that we have a good relationship. You know, I wouldn't dare call myself a mentor to anybody, but at the same time, you know, I'm not shy when it comes to telling a guy where I think that he can get better.
How about your season? I mean, it may not look the same as last year, wins and losses, but a lot of your peripherals are similar. You know, a lot of people dial into the advanced stats. How do you look at yours?
Well, you know, that's a good question. It's hard because I'm the type of guy that, you know, I don't enjoy anything more than winning. You know, I mean, it's just such a good statistic for me personally. Now I know those metrics, that specific metric is not a good measurement. I realize that because a lot of guys get run support, a lot of guys don't, so on and so forth. At the end of the year, if I can look back and have an ERA that I feel like is in a good place in innings pitched, that will show that I've been reliable and trustworthy, and that's all I want to be. You know, if I can be reliable every fifth day, you know you're going to get 6, 7, 8 innings out of me, and I'm going to keep the team in the game, and I'm going to do it every fifth day, then I feel like there's a lot of merit to that, and that's what I've always tried to gear my workouts to, my mentality to, and that's what I feel like I can offer. You know, I don't feel like I necessarily on a daily basis can go out there and be Roy Halladay, but at the same time, I feel like I have a lot to offer, and this year I feel like it's no different. I feel like I've been able to offer that. But I still got 8 starts left, and I'm hoping for the best. And I win all 8. What's that make me? 13 and 11? Not bad.
Well, how you talk about the evolution of the knuckleball? Where is that this year versus prior years? Is it where? Is it ever going to be where it needs to be, or what do you?
Man, I think that's the beauty of the pitch. I think that's what makes it so fun. Is that it's, you know, it's so much more about relationship and perfection. I mean, it really is. I mean, going out there every day, I feel like this year I've been able to change speeds with it and realize the real weapon with it. Now it's hard to do, but I'm getting better at it. So that's something I feel like I can carry into the next year even. Knowing when to use my conventional stuff and relationship to when I use my knuckleball, that's another stepping stone. So I would say, you know, I mean, Charlie Huff told me right out of the gate, he said, look, R.A., it took me 1 day to learn how to throw a knuckleball and a lifetime to learn how to throw it for strikes. And so I feel like I can throw my knuckleball for strikes. And again, if you look at my walks per 9 innings, it's pretty decent. It has been for 2 years. So I feel like that part I've kind of got a good handle on. Now that I have that part down, I feel like, you know, there's a few more steps that I really want to take with the pitch. And one is being able to take spin completely off when I throw a slow one and then when I throw a hard one. You know, I'm about 70% right now, you know. Wakefield's probably 85%, 90% as far as being able to subtract spin and knowing how and how much and so on and so forth.
You guys are very different though.
Yeah, very different. But ultimately, the ball that we throw, what makes it do what it does is lack of spin. I mean, that thing is similar between us. So I often lean on him. And if I could ever get to the point that he's at with the arm strength that I have before I get too old, I think that I could really have some pretty neat years.
Is it a challenge for you to get consistent feedback since you are the only knuckleballer on the staff?
I have a real blessing in Dan Worthen has been phenomenal. You know, I think a lot of the success that I've been able to experience has been manifested in our relationship because when I first got here, I gave him a bunch of checkpoints to look for because I can't see them. A lot of times I can feel them, but even the best of us can't always feel them. We're mechanically out of sync. Now I had to teach him that a little bit because he didn't have a barometer to measure me against. You know, he was with Steve Sparks, who was a knuckleballer for a while. So he has some experience, but at the same time, everybody's different, and we had to kind of work over, you know, what to look for, what to remind me of, and he has been so steadfast in doing that. It's been great.
Good.
You guys will do 2 more questions, and then Ari's going to get back inside.
Are you teaching your knuckleball to anyone?
You know, there was a couple of guys in the offseason that contacted me. One guy's an independent ball now, or he was, and until he got hurt, named Chris Nolan. And he came to Nashville and we threw together a little bit. And then I get questions all the time from, you know, whether it's Twitter or fan mail or whatever, about little kids wanting to learn how to throw it, you know. And so I feel like I've worked with a lot of guys.
Do you see yourself sticking around well into your 40s as an knuckler?
I don't know. I've had the kind of story that I'm much better trying to live the next 5 minutes well, you know. So I don't know. I think I have the type of pitch that will allow me to do that, and I feel good. My body feels good enough to be able to do that. As for, will that be a certainty? I can't tell you. I can tell you I'll be out there Sunday at 110.
And we'll be watching.
All right, that's good.
How's your foot?
It's better, you know. It's really. They told me it'd be about 2.5 months, and it's scarred down pretty good. So it's really a non-issue.
No issue for the mountain?
No issue at all. And it's been good lately.